Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for your perseverance. We'll wait for Ernie a moment of time. He should come back soon. I think he's back already. Had a good weekend. Thank you for asking about the weekend. I would like you to continue to pray for my niece that is still here. She will be leaving on Sunday morning or Saturday night, depending. And the person is devastated a little bit because of personal reason and so on, stuff that you can relate to. And Friday afternoon, I'm planning to take her out by myself with her, which I did not do during the 3 weeks and stuff, and to clarify the point of the faith and the value of it, and if she would like to make a commitment to that by her own, and sharing the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. I don't know if it's going to work. Like Debbie said, I'm a close relative. She knows what I do from A to Z. She came to church. I don't know if you will see her on Thursday. Pray that she might come tomorrow night, and that she may be found. That's the only thing that she needs. She needs to be found. The person is deeply depressed. It's eating up Sylvie also for the last 3 weeks, which I understand, but anyway. So I would like, at the end of the day, I'm going to ask maybe Ernie to close in prayer, and Ernie, if you would like to lift that up, that would be precious. We are on camera right now on YouTube, so welcome people of YouTube. Before we start with a word of prayer with you, we have a special night together despite I don't want to say dry, despite the difficulties sometimes in the text that we have to go through. You will enjoy your evening tonight until 8:15 for sure. Please go to page 29. You see, we're going somewhere. Already page 9 of 27. So that's not too bad at all. And this is session number 20 tonight. 20 weeks, actually. It's beautiful. It's going to take another 20 weeks to go through for sure. Capital E, Damascus and Samaria. Damascus is Syria in the context, and Samaria is Israel. And I left you on point number 2, basically, the departed glory of Israel in chapter 17. That's where you ought to be. In chapter 17 of the book of Isaiah. I'm going to make a very short review. Let's go back for a moment in the devastation of Syria. Let's go back to point number 1, just as a means of review, and we carry on with this evening and so forth. Join me. Let's unite the hearts, and I would like to invite you before we start again for tomorrow night. I have a good message ready on the book of Ecclesiastes. So don't give up on us, invite friends, and so on and so forth. Let's take a silent time and go for our studies tonight. Gracious Lord, I thank you for your presence. I thank you also for the fact that with you, we are allowed to express our emotions and our feelings. I'm alluding more, Father, to my niece being present here among us in BC, coming from Quebec. The request that we do unto you for the person to be found in the same way that we have been found. Lord, everything is possible to you. We don't know if the person has been predestined to eternal life. We do not know this, but we know one thing, that you are sovereign. You love mankind, and you have chosen some. And our work is to witness for you. In a loving way, not in a legalistic way, but in a loving way, an understanding way. We're not better, Father, yet we're found. We're part of the beloved of Christ in God. These people are not. And this is strictly impossible for them to comprehend these things unless the veil of the heart is lifted up by you. That's what I am asking you to do. Sitting in darkness, there is nothing more scary than that, but they're not even scared of it, despite the discouragement. I plead with you, Father, find my niece in due time. In the meantime, help us to make the most of our time tonight as we devote our studies of a somewhat difficult book, difficult passages sometimes to labor through, but we've made a commitment and we want to know more about you. And we pray you, Father, asking you all these things in the name of Christ. Amen. Beautiful. So we go to Damascus in capital E, Damascus and Samaria. You have that already on your display. Israel, and last week I showed you this as well. This map is a bit dark, but anyway, Syria is on the top right. And basically, you have the following chart. Israel at the bottom. Israel is in the north here. Okay? Just by means of review, I would like to repeat that from the book of Emmanuel, before Arabic number 1, we remember that these two united together against Judah. I'm sorry for this. Cell phone. You definitely have pros and cons. Okay. They united against Judah and so on, and we have seen these things in the book of Emmanuel. If you review your notes occasionally, this is nothing new unto you that Syria and the north allied together to basically destroy the seed of David and so on. So keep in mind that there is a nice lesson for us in it, that prior to the death of Christ, it's impossible to get away with the Davidic dynasty. Simply your Savior, our common Savior, is coming from the stock of Jesse, from the branch of David and so on, and you cannot get rid of the Davidic dynasty because our Savior comes from that lineage. We have seen Arabic number 1, it's reviewed right now, the devastation of Syria and Israel in verses 1, 2, and 3, which I will read again for you, make a few comments as we get close to where we left. 17, verses 1, 2, and 3. The oracle concerning Damascus, which is Syria. Behold, Damascus is about to be removed from being a city and will become a fallen ruin. The cities of Aroer, circle that city, are forsaken. They will be for flocks to lie down there, and there will be no one to frighten them. The fortified city will disappear from Ephraim, circle Ephraim, that's Israel in the north, and sovereignty from Damascus. And the remnant of Aram, they will be like the glory of the sons of Israel. I did ask you to circle that, declares Jehovah. All right, Damascus, meaning Syria, will suffer devastation. This is review again. I gave you scriptures, Vicky, and all of you. Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 23 to 27. And I gave you also the book of Amos, chapter 1, verses 3 to 5. Then it comes from Israel, basically Israel on the north. Because of Israel's alliance, I repeat, with Syria going against the house of David, that's why the judgment comes. Damascus, the city, is Aroer in verse 2. That was the city back then. And Aroer, which was good for producing growth, after its destruction will be only good for animal to graze in that place. Still review. But here as well, the situation is better than Babylon, because Babylon will not even be good after these judgments for grazing. It will be a place of burning pitch and brimstone. In verse 3, the remnant of Damascus will be like the glory of Israel. We get close to where we leave here, where we left last week. And here, the remnant of Damascus will be like the glory of Israel, and the glory of Israel here refers to the northern kingdom. Make a note of that, not Israel as a totality, but more precisely the northern kingdom. Is it where I left? No? Yes. Okay. The problem is, like I said last week, is the glory has departed. the glory did depart. They will be like the glory, at the end of verse 3, of the sons of Israel, declares Jehovah of hosts. It's a negative. It's not positive here. Because the glory did depart, it's a statement of irony. If you ask me why the glory did depart, it's simply because the northern part of Israel was very much given into idolatry. That's why it was not glorious anymore. It's not a departure of the Shekinah glory per se from the temple, but it's a departure of the glory before falling into idolatry. Now we come to point 2 on your outlines. Have a peek at your point 2 under capital E. That's right here, the glory of Israel, 17:4-6. We read this. Now in that day the glory of Jacob will fade, and the fatness of his flesh will become lean, circle lean. It will be even like the reaper gathering the standing grain, and his arm harvest the ears, and it will be like one gleaning ears of grain in the valley of Rephaim. Yet gleanings will be left in it like the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 olives on the topmost bough. How do you pronounce that word? Bough. 4 or 5 on the branches of a fruitful tree, declares Jehovah, the God of Israel. It is here that he deals with the departed glory of Israel. And based upon 4b here, because the glory has departed, the land will be lean, skinny, and lean. Verse 4b. Verse 4b, the land will be lean. Based upon verse 5, it will resemble a very much harvested field, meaning nothing to see, nothing to glean. Because you remember the law that you had to leave stuff in the corner, but it will be left completely unfruitful. And in verse 6, it's as if you would go over the gleaning of the land twice. You will see 2 or 3 olives on the top of the trees because you cannot reach them, so it's a sign of leanness. Because of the idolatry and because of the departure of the glory. It might resemble a little bit of our churches today. Okay, at large, the churches at large, I think we are lean. The glory of the church age, when the time we compare with the church of Ephesus, at the beginning of the church age, they were so given to the word. So now we're winning down and we look like a double harvested field right now. We're not very healthy. It's dry. Arabic number 3, the conversion 7-8. Come with me. 7-8. In that day, man will have regard for his Maker. Circle regard for his Maker. And his eyes will look to the Holy One of Israel. He will not have regard for the altars and the work of his hands, nor will he look to that which his fingers have made, even the Asherim and incense stands. Remember that he's not dealing with Israel as a whole, he's dealing with the northern kingdom. Israel, not Judah. He is not dealing with the kingdom of Israel as a whole, but he is dealing with what you see on the screen right now, with the capital in Samaria, right here, because right now you have a picture of the north here. The south, again, if you can look right here, you have the capital in Samaria. This is Israel. Where is my Samaria? Right here. So that's the northern part. It's not the Judean part. It's the northern kingdom. Keep in mind that in verse 7 it's positive because it's not in man. It's not inherent to man to look up to God. We can see that today. Nobody's crying out to God. They cry out to vaccines, but not to God. It's not in us to do that. Remember the last heavy crisis, the Twin Towers, when they went down. Who was president in the United States on these years was George Bush. And he was addressing the issue in prayers. He was drawing, asking the people to pray. And the prime minister back then, if I'm not mistaken, was Stephen Harper. Am I right? And he was asking the people to pray. You don't see that in that crisis. So things are not getting better. It's deteriorating because it's not inherent for man to cry to God and so on. They will reject idolatry. In verse 8, he will not have regards for the altars. Circle altars. Altars is okay, but not those that are man-made. Nor will he look that which his finger have made. Man-made stuff, even the Asherim. The Asherim are wooden symbols of female deity. Wooden symbols of female deity. So they will not be looking unto these things in verse 8. And that is a reference to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 16, verses 10 onward. 2 Kings chapter 16, verses 10 FF, meaning following verses and so on. Okay, so concerning the conversion, I repeat a few things. That remember that he is dealing with Israel in the sense of the northern kingdom, to keep everything within the context. When I say Israel, don't think about the whole Israel. It's for the northern kingdom. Why? Because they allied with Syria, the east, to combine the conspiracy. In verses 7 to 8, which I read already, there will be a conversion of these people after these things, where they will look unto the Holy One of Israel. It will happen, so it should happen today, and it will happen in the future for the remnant. But primarily, it's not inherent for mankind to look up to God. We have a very conspicuous example in the last year. Now we move on to Arabic number 4, the desolation cause for the forsaking of God, for forsaking God. The desolation cause for forsaking God, chapter 17, verses 9 to 11. Come with me. In that day, their strong cities will be like forsaken places in the forest, or like branches which they abandon before the sons of Israel, and the land will be a desolation. For you have forgotten the God of your salvation, circle that, and have not remembered the rock of your refuge, circle the rock. Therefore you plant delightful plants and set them with vine slips of a strange god. In the day that you plant it, you carefully fence it in, and in the morning you bring your seed to blossom. But the harvest will be a heap in a day of sickliness and incurable pain. The desolation caused by the forsaking God here will lead to two results. Two results. Number 1, here verse 9, the cities are forsaken and have become a desolation. That's the first result. The cities are abandoned or forsaken and have become a desolation. And under the first result also in verse 10, we have the root cause. What's the root cause? They have forsaken the rock, forgotten their salvation, and have not remembered the rock. Whenever you see the word rock used as a symbol, symbolically, it's always the second person of the triune God, Christ Jesus. We have studied that together in Daniel chapter 2. The little rock that hit the statue, it's the Messianic kingdom. So they have forsaken Christ. The first result, the cities are forsaken, have become a desolation when God wants the people to enjoy the land. And the root cause, you have forsaken me. The second result are in verse 10b and 11. 10b reads as follows: Therefore you plant delightful plants and set them with vine slips of a strange god. And in the day that you plant it, you carefully fence it in. And in the morning you bring your seed to blossom, but the harvest will be a heap. In a day of sickliness and incurable pain, simply put, unproductive land or field. Unproductive fields, and it's good for the cities and good for the countries. Just picture Victoria and the Sanishton Peninsula with all the fields there. Everything will be devastated and waste. Take a deep breath. I know that some of you are tired. Take a deep breath right now. We fall into the sudden collapse of the invasion of Judah. The sudden collapse of the invasion of Judah. Point number 5. And this is a hard passage to study and to teach. So now I have much to say about it. Not that much, but it's hard to teach because sometimes, like you struggle, Sylvie, when we're tired and so on, where is he at and what will be happening? It's one of the difficult passages here, I confess it. Verse 12. We are the collapse of the invasion of Judah. Verse 12 to 14a. Come with me. Alas, the uproar of many peoples, circle peoples, who roar like the roaring of the seas and the rumbling of nations, circle nations, who rushed on like the rumbling of mighty waters. The nation rumbles on like the rumbling of many waters. Circle again the plurality of the word nations. But he will rebuke them and they will flee far away and be chased like chaff in the mountains before the wind, or like the whirling dust before a gale. At evening time, behold, there is terror. Before morning, they are no more. In verse 12, the invasion here, notice peoples meaning many nations, so that's why it's plural. The invasion talked about include many peoples here, meaning many nations. In verses 13 and 14a, you have the collapse and even the disappearing of the army. You have the collapse and even the armies disappearing. This is here that this is difficult. I explained to you. We cannot be sure, no theologians can be sure, if he is talking about the invasion of Syria and the northern kingdom, against the house of Judah. It's impossible to be sure if Isaiah right now is talking about Syria in the east that you have on the map and the northern kingdom of Israel when they came against Judah. It's impossible to make sure that this is it. He talked about it already. He talked about it already in chapters 7 to 12. Isaiah talked about these things. I'm saying nothing new to you in the book of Emmanuel, chapters 7 to 12. Particularly in chapters 7 and 8. I repeat, we cannot be sure if he's talking about the invasion of Syria and Israel against Judah the south. Isaiah already talked about these things in chapters 7 and 8, more precisely. We cannot be sure. Or if he is talking about the final invasion, it's either this or he is talking about the final invasion, which is part of Armageddon. Or Armageddon, the battle of the mountain of Megiddo. The reason it's because he mentions many nations, more than two. So the plural, as soon as you have two nations, it's nations. But here he seems to be talking about many nations that will come, prophetically speaking, against the whole house of Israel in the battle of Armageddon here. So it's either he talks about this battle of Armageddon, or he is still on the issue of Syria and the northern kingdom. We don't know for sure. I lean towards Armageddon. Simply 3 times I ask you nations, nations, and nations. Is he speaking of Syria and the northern kingdom, or is he speaking about all the nations of the planet at the end of the Great Tribulation, where there will be the battle of the campaign of Armageddon? We don't know. But the principle of collapsing is true either way. It doesn't matter if Isaiah is talking about what we just look at the screen TV or what we study in the book of Revelation. It doesn't matter because the collapse applies either way. Because the collapse of Syria and Israel will happen and did happen already, and Armageddon will happen anyway. So the collapse principle is true either way you take the text right now. Do you understand how difficult it can be to teach that? But I think I did render it quite clear. This is one part that you have the choice, you make your pick concerning this. That's why Isaiah can be complicated. And if you go with Armageddon, you don't necessarily violate the context, because the context was given in the book of Emmanuel. Knowing that sometimes, like I explained to you, Isaiah will see things near as well as he will see things very far. It's good not only for Isaiah. It's good for the minor prophets and whatever you study. Now you become more sympathetic with the work of a teacher or the work of a pastor. Unless you're completely careless about it, you throw to the people what they want to hear, or you completely avoid the passage. That's the easiest way to do it. But when a person is requesting an in-depth look, that's the cost of it. If I do a full exposition and I say to you, I have nothing to say about 17, 12 to 14, you will say there is something stinky under the surface of it here. And that's the difficulties that sometimes we face, and it's not the only one that we face. But so far, we've been doing quite good. Number 6, the principle is in 14b. Verse 14b, such will be the portion, circled portion, of those who plunder us, and the lot of those who pillage us. Okay? This is very short here. That's their portion or their lot, whether you want Armageddon or whether you want Syria and the kingdom of the north. Whew. Thank you for your kindness and patience. Now we come to Ethiopia. Let's go to Ethiopia. We'd like to take you there. Look at the map. These guys are clearer a little bit. We go to Ethiopia. I have a few things to say concerning that. So let's take number 1, the announcement of the judgment. I have two things to say before we start. Okay? No, I'm going to abide on that map, and I will give you a second one. So the first one is Ethiopia, and it's way south here. If you go more south down there, you arrive to Egypt, and if you carry on going down south, you have Ethiopia. Okay? Close to Africa and so on. So this is your Ethiopia, the Red Sea, and if you go up north of Ethiopia is Egypt. This is important. That's the scriptures that we study right now. And here, the Adbara, make a note of that, Adbara in the corner of your piece of paper. This is one of the main river here. Let's read verses 1 and 3 of chapter 18.
Excuse me, where's the river that you're talking about?
Adbara. You see, this is a river that goes like this. I'll come back to this one here. Do you see what I'm marking? Let's take our time. The time is on our side. This is Ethiopia. Adbara, it's a river. That's the one that goes like this. And I will allude to this one here in a moment of time. Okay? Come with me. The text will become alive a little bit with the maps. Alas, 18:1. O land of wearing wings, which lies beyond the rivers of Cush. Circle Cush. Cush is Ethiopia. Which sends envoys by the sea, even in papyrus vessels on the surface of the waters. Go, swift messengers, to a nation tall and smooth. Circle tall and smooth. To a people feared far and wide, a powerful and oppressive nation, whose land the rivers divide. Circle rivers divide, rivers divide. All of you inhabitants of the world and dweller on the earth, circle the totality of 3a. All you inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, as soon as the standard is raised on the mountains, you will see it. And as soon as the trumpet is blown, you will hear it. Verses 1 and 2 are put into diplomatic terms. Diplomatic terms in 1 and 2. Words of diplomat. The nation involved in verse 1 here, in verse 1, is Cush. Cush is simply a different name for Ethiopia. The expression wearing wings, it refers to swarms of insects, very well known in Egypt and Ethiopia. These are the type of flies that flies in swarms, big quantity. Flies that travel in swarms. Ethiopia has 2 rivers. The first river that I would like you to note, it's the Adbara right here that flows into the land of Ethiopia. The second river is what we call the Blue Nile River. This is the one right here that goes up south. From the Blue Nile River, you get the Nile River of Egypt. You have them on both. So look at this one here. It's going to be magnified. It goes up south and it becomes the Nile River of Egypt. So the source of the Nile River is from Ethiopia. It flows northward into Egypt, hence key river for them. Across the rivers, was the city of Napata. The city of Napata. Napata was the capital city back then. Now it's Addis Ababa, right here. Here, Addis Ababa. Here, Addis Ababa. If you erase that and you go to the ancient time of Isaiah, it was called Napata. It was called Napata. Again, these are part of the cities and countries that surround the people of Israel. Here in verse 2, Ethiopia sent messengers to Israel. Ethiopia sent messengers to Israel. That's it. To seek an alliance against Assyria. The Ethiopian people, they sent messengers to Israel for the purpose of seeking an alliance against Assyria. That's the threat, Assyria, that is coming against the land of Judah and the land of the northern kingdom. Based on verse 2, again, go swift messenger to a nation tall and smooth. The nation tall and smooth are the Ethiopian people. These are good pictures. They are tall and smooth. On the skinny side, look at the picture. That's the Ethiopian people. A nation tall and smooth. The Ethiopian people, they're very dark, they're very black. The populated Ethiopia, back then they were Nubians. Nubians or Nubians. They were African indigenous. You have a lot of these people in Israel because lots of them were Jews. And they are tall and smooth. When the messengers arrive in Judah, when the messengers sent by the people tall and smooth, they arrive in Judah, the one that speaks with them is Isaiah. The one that speaks with them is Isaiah in verse 3. He is the one that speaks with them with the word of judgment. They're received by Isaiah saying, all you inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, as soon as the standard is raised on the mountains, you will see it, and as soon as the trumpet is blown, you will hear it. Isaiah at that point, he sees only the Ethiopians coming, but he calls the shot on the whole world's attention right now. And that is your introduction of what we will do after the break, verses 4 and 6, basically, which will be the judgment. That's your introduction here. Listen, O the planet. Do I need to repeat anything for the sake of note-making? I had more than this pictures that I would have preferred, but they were a little bit graphic because the ladies are topless on it, but it was nice actually to see tall and smooth. Germaine, would you pause, please? We'll be back in a moment of time. By the way, Germaine, don't touch right now. It's going to be difficult for you on YouTube. You will, those who do only the audio, because there is lots of PowerPoint and there is more pictures to come, so please watch it on YouTube. Thank you.